Alright guys, just wanted to give you a quick intro to this car. Decided I wanted to go ahead and try to do a little bit of video on it. I've already done some work to it, but I wanted to give a little background of it. I picked it up locally for $1,000. It came complete except the engine had a blown head gasket is what the previous owner said. But the car itself is actually a local car here in Kentucky. It's actually been owned by a few people that I know. I didn't know that at the time whenever I bought it, but after I bought it, I had seen where they were asking about it and said they believe that's their old car. And really the telltale were the wheels, the red inky J speeds that are on there, which they need some work. They've got some issues with the clear coat flaking off. The paint itself is good, but the clear coat is flaking off all around on all four. So I'll probably sand those down, probably keep the red, but repolish those lips. This car is really early 2000s styling. You've got a lot of features like the DC exhaust that's on here. I think it's actually a MagnaFlow muffler with a DC tip. But it's got the Mugen style body kit from Wings West on here, which actually that's probably one of the best looking kits they make for the CRX, even though my styling's more of the factory OEM styling, which we'll talk about this car in a future video. But there were several little things on here, like there was a power chip that was on the front here plugged in. Which is completely pointless, but you know, early 2000s, a lot of people put those on there. The funny story about this motor is, after I swapped my CRX with a V16, this thing was taking up space here in the garage. Obviously, I don't have a lot of room in here. So I sold this motor to a local guy that was going to use it, but he stashed it in his garage, and several weeks later, I ran across this silver CRX that needed a motor. And so I contacted him, and he actually sold this motor back to me for just a little bit more than I paid. And part of that deal was swapping that intake that came on this car, which was like an aluminum power chamber style. And he gave me the OEM airbox, which will be fine. This isn't going to be like a high performance car. We're really just trying to clean it up. Probably going to have to repaint the car. I repainted this car, so this is the first car I've ever painted. I painted it right here in this garage here, just using a small air compressor over there. It turned out really, really nice for my first time. I mean, there are some flaws, but I mean, I'm pretty happy with it. So we're going to give this one a shot here. I think the body kit's going to probably have to stay on the car. There's a lot of polyurethane holding the door cards on, different things like that. So I'm going to do the best I can with it. It's not going to be a show car, but it's going to be a lot cleaner than it is here. I mean, the previous owner really didn't take great care of it. There's scratches here, and on the door, there's some deep scratches there, like almost a key mark almost there. Some little door dings and more scratches. It's really not horrible, but just overall, every panel has some sort of paint issue. So really just an overall respray. I'm going to keep the same silver color. There's a few little issues here in the corner of some rust starting to form down here. I'm going to really hit that hard and sand it down, try to get that cleaned up as best I can. I mean, for $1,000, it's a really good deal, because I mean, it came with the body kit, the wheels alone, and I haven't even shown you the hood that it came with. We'll walk over here and take a look at this hood. It came with a carbon fiber hood. I mean, it wasn't perfect condition. There's a couple of cracks here on the front that I've already sanded down. Here in the back, I sanded this down. The corner was chipped off. I bought some epoxy off of Amazon and fixed this corner and the other corner as well. They were chipped off. It turned out pretty good. It's not perfect. Let me see if I can get it focused. There we go. It's not perfect, but it's going to be great once I get it sanded down and re-cleared. The front bumper, here it is. It's the Wings West Mugen style front bumper. It's got a little bend to it. You can see where they had run into something and the paint started flaking off. It was worse. It did arch up quite a bit here. I've taken the heat gun to it, kind of flattened it out a little bit. A little bit more work. I think it will retain its shape, or it will take its shape back. I've started sanding here. This side here looked like this over here. A lot of cracks. The paint is super thick. It was done by a friend of mine years and years ago. So they did a really great job painting this car. But when you run into something on a polyurethane bumper, I mean, you can't ask for it to stay on there very well. So I've sanded. I'm going to try to not gouge up this polyurethane as best I can. But this paint is so thick and it's got these hairline cracks all the way down it. I'm really going to have to sand it all down. I'm going to try to avoid taking all the paint off if I can, because that's going to be a ton more work. But it may be necessary. And the same situation is on the rear bumper here. It's flaking off. They had backed into something again. So I'm going to have to do a lot of sanding on this guy here. Showed you earlier the bumper had been backed into. They had backed into something, or someone had rear-ended them just slightly. I pulled the bumper off to see what kind of damage there was, and the only damage that I saw was the bumper support itself had been bent in. I've pulled it out a little bit, but I'm going to take this off and straighten it out some more. May have to tack weld this again, and I'm going to scuff this guy up, or wire wheel it, and put a fresh coat of chassis paint on there to make sure that this rust doesn't progress any further on this. These are hard to find, not rusted, so I'm going to need to take care of that sooner than later. I've already done the front. I pulled it off and wire wheeled it and put a fresh coat of that chassis paint on here, so it looks really nice. Previous owner had cut it to make the Mugen style front bumper fit, which I just cleaned up the edges a little bit and repainted it, so it turned out really nice. Here's a couple of parts that I actually took off of the blown head gasket engine here. One of them is this Ractive header. I mean, that Ractive is like an off brand that you could buy at the parts store. And this thing, I think it was supposed to be stainless maybe, but it's so rusted up that it had to have been super cheap alloys of stainless. We're probably going to just leave that off the car. I put the stock D15 or D16 header or exhaust manifold back on there. That'll be fine for this car. I'm going to put this heat shield, this OE heat shield back on it. I repainted it, so it's going to look really clean once it's on the car. It's going to cover up that rust. It's going to look really clean under this engine hood. All right, what else do we have here? Oh yeah, I've got the aluminum strut tower bar. That was a must back in the early 2000s. You had to get one of these guys, to add rigidity to your frame. I'm going to polish this up, get rid of some of this rust, maybe using some evapor rust. I think it'll clean up nicely. It'll add a little touch to the engine bay. It's not going to really do much, but it will help. So like I was saying, this engine here is basically done. It does start, but it won't stay running, and that's due to the ignition switch that I've got to replace. It should be here in a few days, so I'll do an update once I get that swapped out, or I'll do an update swapping that out and getting this thing running. I got a new oxygen sensor on here, and this thing should be good to go. It's super clean looking though. I cleaned it up before I put it in. I resprayed some of the engine bay here to match the exterior. There was some primer that I guess they had done a repair. Actually, it was on this other side here. there was a primer repair here, I guess, just covering up some bad paint or some sort of repair. This silver looks a lot better. It matches nearly perfectly. I didn't clear coat it because I didn't want to pull every single thing out of here and mask it off and repaint. And even the factory finish isn't clear coated. It's just a satin sheen to it. So that's what I left. So another thing I forgot to mention here is the radiator that was in this car. I pulled it out whenever I did the engine swap, and it looked pretty rough. It's an all metal radiator. I don't know if that's an OE or not. I don't think it is. I think the OE came with plastic upper and lower tanks. But I did flush it out because of the head gasket issue that they were telling me about. And it looks like coolant got into the exhaust and not the oil into the coolant from what I saw in the coolant tank. But I flushed it out anyway, and I was checking to see if this thing had any leaks, and it does look like it has a leak, so I'm going to have to get a replacement radiator for the car. The suspension on this car is going to be left alone. It's got some sort of factory replacement shock here. I think it says like Spectrum. I don't know if that's just a factory replacement or exactly what that is, but it's got some lowering springs on here, which I will throw up some pictures of the car when I got it and after I cleaned it up. And it sits really nicely with those, so I'm going to leave those on there just as they are. And you can also see the upper control arms are some sort of aftermarket with a camber adjustment plate here. Hopefully the alignment's good on this car. I have not done a test drive of it because I've only started it once and I couldn't keep it running because of the ignition switch. So I ordered a set of tires to throw on here. This one here will not hold air. The other ones are holding air fine, but I wouldn't trust them out on the road. I've actually got a new set over here. Let's see what they are. Just some cheap, I think they were like $50 a piece. Ventus, hand-cooked Ventus, they're like 50 bucks a piece. Got those in the other day, so I will be throwing those on those Inky J-Speeds pretty soon. That way I can take this thing for a test drive once I get that ignition switch in. So actually I've still got the broken ignition switch here. This was what was on the car. There's no spot for a key. It was completely broken off. I guess someone had tried to steal it and hotwire it, or not knowing what they were doing. They didn't get the car. What's funny is the guy I bought it from said he had the head off of the car, and the people broke into the garage, cut all the copper wires out of the garage. They were going to take this car, I guess, but they saw that the head was off of it. They actually, I don't know how they did it, how they had time to do it, but they put the head back on the car. They really tried to reassemble everything and get the car running to steal, which is crazy. I've never heard of anything like that before, but obviously they didn't get away with the car. They must not have had a way to hook up and pull it out of there, because it's still here. But they did put the head back on, put the intake manifold and everything back on the car. Didn't get it running, obviously. But I just thought it was funny. They busted the ignition, like trying to get the car started, but the car had a blown head gasket, so they definitely failed at doing that. But this is the ignition off the car. Here's the lock cylinders. I've already replaced in the doors and the trunk because the car did not come with a key. The owner could not find the key after so many years of sitting. All right, we're going to move into the interior. So the interior is in really good shape. I've got it pulled apart a little bit right now, but you can see, there's one little dent here on the door card, which a lot of times you'll see huge cuts, which I'll show you on the passenger side. It's got a big gouge in it, but it's not horrible. The interior is in really good shape. It's got this eBay steering wheel with, I believe it's an eBay quick release hub. See if I can do this. No, I'm not going to be able to do it with one hand. But it's got a quick release hub. Probably going to leave this on there. I had originally planned to swap it out with an OE steering wheel, but I think I'm just going to leave this in there. Kind of adds to that early 2000s, styling. So right off the bat, you can see these no-name racing seats. They're actually pretty decent seats. The foam is a little bit worn here on the bolster, which you can expect. Not too bad though. We're gonna leave those in there. It's got some nice, I think these are like Energy brand, CRX branded floor mats. Let's see what else we got in here. It didn't have a stereo, and that's what I've got here. I've just got a, little Sony stereo I'm gonna put in, see if it completes the interior. It's got a little red stitching shift boot. The shift knob was an aluminum styling, racing style shift knob. It's nothing fancy. It's a no name, I believe. A lot of eBay parts here on this car, but it's not horrible though. One big thing about this car is the climate control usually breaks, and I believe this one has been repaired. It looks like you can see this plastic repair plate over the front of it, which you glue that to the original and it holds it together. So this alone, with a repaired climate control, with all these extra parts, I mean, it's well worth what I paid for it. It may even have a short shifter in here. Most likely it does. I know that it's got some shifter bushings underneath the car. Probably needs to be loosened up a little bit. It's really tight shifting, so I believe the actual shift linkage is a little too tight. But the problem here is this switch is bad. The one I bought, it was a used one, so I'm gonna have to swap the ignition switch, which I'll be doing that later when I receive it in the mail. All right, moving to the back here, you can see that it's got a full interior, but there are a couple of flaws. Some of the carpet's ripped up here. Not gonna do much with that. Probably re-adhere it to it. Maybe throw a little black paint or charcoal looking paint behind there to mask that a little bit. It's got the full rear interior as well. So the cargo cover, it's got all the rear plastics. I've removed some of this already because I was taking this rear bumper off, so I removed the tail lights. But they've done a battery relocate, which isn't horrible. It's mounted really securely back here. I've got a new battery in there already. It's got the rear cargo cover on it. It's torn like most of them are, but it's in good shape. So that's a feature here, very nice. So this car does have the rear disc swap on it, which I also have the rear disc swap on my 88. But the thing about my rear disc swap is it is off of a DA Integra. And if you know anything about the rear disc swaps off of the DA Integra, you know that it actually brings the offset, or actually brings the wheelbase out about a ½ inch on each side, which is fine if you're running the stock wheels here. But if you look closely, you can tell that the front is inset more than the back. And I'm going to, not repair it, but I'm going to fix that by swapping these trailing arms with this disc swap onto my 88. Because this car I'm going to keep, this car I'm going to fix and I'm going to sell. So I'm going to swap these rear trailing arms onto my 88. But I'm not going to put the DA ones on here because you're going to run into the same problem on this. Because especially with these wheels, which are a lower offset, it's going to really push it out past the fender, and you'll run into problems with rubbing, and then your front doesn't match the rear. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw these on the 88, take the DA trailing arms and set them aside, and I'm going to put my rear trailing arms off of the 88 that have the drums, which I've got over here. They're just sitting over here, not in use. I'm going to take those and I'm going to put them on the 89 here. But I'm not going to leave the drums on there. I'm going to use the Scarebird brackets here that I bought. And I'm going to use these guys to convert to rear disc using the drum trailing arms. I have not tried that yet. I've seen a few people do it. So I'm hoping it goes well, and it's an easy bolt up. So that's what I'm going to do with that. Those trailing arms need new bushings, and so I bought some hard race bushings to replace the factory torn ones. They're always torn after so many years, and the hard race makes a direct replacement. It's a little bit more robust and solid than the factory rubber. Well, that's about all I can think of to go over today. Let me know what you guys want to see on these videos here. I'm going to do as much as I can, showing the work and the progress. But it's kind of tough because, like this bumper over here, I've already gotten started sanding on it, and it takes so long to sand through all that I really need to do like a time lapse of all this sanding and body work. I'm going to have to really get some better DA sanding discs, because the ones I've got are some cheap ones and they don't last very long. So it really takes a long time to really sand through all this. So I've got the front and the rear to do. And once I get to the car itself, it should be a lot easier, because the paint on the car is really nice shape other than all these scratches on it. There are a few places, like on the fenders, where the tire had hit and the paint is starting to chip off. So I'll have to really sand through this paint and fix these little rusted areas here. I've already chipped that off, and there's a spot here. So I gotta, it should be a little easier on the car itself. But let me know what you guys want to see. I'm basically just going to do a quick, semi-restoration of the car. Try to get it clean. Maybe repaint these brake calipers. Get it roadworthy again, because I hate seeing these things sit. And this thing's set for, I guess the license plate was like 2016, so it's the end of 2020. So it's at 4.5, maybe close to 5 years, with a blown head gasket in a garage. So I'm going to show you some of these photos that I took when I got it in the first wash, and different things of me working on it. So let me know.